morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, live with the Creative Birth Strategy Podcast and the Creative Birth Strategies House. Please join us. We're going to be going over education, strategy, and discussion. I want to thank always our sponsors, of course. Can't do it without them. They've been such a necessary part of our growth, and it's just never a dull moment to kind of really appreciate their time and what they've brought to our podcast. My name is Joseph Scarice, founder and a host of the podcast and the house here on Clubhouse. We've been here several years. We're now nearing our 50th episode on our podcast, which you can find us on all the major social media buckets and our website as well: YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Audible, uh, Spotify. We're in all the major spots, and what I really appreciate is really the time in providing insight and strategy. Some really cool announcements I'll be making this morning on some upcoming venues that are going to be involved with the Creative Birth Strategy. So first, let's thank our sponsors. I want to always thank Percatech, our sponsor and our featured social media specialist here on the podcast. Yordell Perkins is really instrumental in maintaining and keeping all this together. He's a great person to have in your bullpen as a social media strategist. Reach out to him. He's just been a fantastic partnership with him for over this last 10 years. I'd like to thank Realty 411 with Linda Pelagas, a national publication, and also providing national events for the Creative Birth Strategies podcast over the last couple of years, post COVID, of course. And she's just been a great partner to have working with. She's typically here on Sunday mornings. I want to thank MB Capital, the unsecured business line of credit referral program that we offer for real estate professionals and business to business professionals throughout the country. And I want to also thank Lendmark Capital, where I'm a senior loan analyst and providing insight and asset-based lending for real estate investors in all 50 states. So today's discussion, which we'll get to, internal rate of return, IRR versus cash yield, what's the difference? Want to kind of update some things that we're going to be putting together. We are rolling out, I'm in discussion right now, it probably won't start till September, a monthly event here in Philadelphia. Most likely it'll be the second Monday evening of the month. It will be set up as an educational module with already pre-selected subject matter in a year in advance. We will tie it in with hopefully educational speakers, but it'll be a mastermind setting. It will be held in Philadelphia, most likely at our offices at 17th and Snyder at the Newbold Exchange. We're still kind of going to figure that out sometime in the next month. Also, I'm in discussion where I'll be setting up a referral program with a property management company that is pretty national for the most part. They're actually buying physical management companies throughout the country. I'm sitting down with them on Monday to kind of iron that out, so that there'll be an opportunity there to find and identify off-market deals through my real estate licenses at this management company. It still allows me to stay neutralized from a real estate agent perspective, since I'm really going to be, my license is going to be with a management service. And what's so great about our podcast, we offer so many tools for the real estate professional. We offer educational tools how to better pencil your deals down, such as DSCR, such as understanding maximum allowable offer, understanding cash flow, and then also understanding rehab construction, and also how to put your portfolio together to present to a lender or an investor to better understand what's going on with your portfolio. We also are the only club here that has a CE accredited course on asset-based lending that can be taught in every state in the country for investor groups, realtor associations, or mastermind groups as well, for real estate agents to get their CE up to 3 credits. And we're rolling out a new CE course by September. Very excited about making this announcement. We're putting together, I'm running a lot of the modules together right now as well with the school. We'll be having a wholesaling real estate course that will be 3 credit accredited CE that will be provided in every state in the country. So we're working on New Jersey and PA first, because once I have that base approved, then I can get it approved everywhere else. But it'll be about wholesaling real estate as a understanding it as a real estate agent. So we're working on that. I'm very excited about that because I'll probably be one of the only individuals that will be accredited in discussing wholesaling real estate and recognizing it as well. So let's dive into some update, some market news and trends that are going on in the market. Month end close was absolutely insane, right? Because we had the Memorial Day weekend, and then we still had another week to close deals. A lot of fixed to rent, a lot of DSCR loans coming to the front line, and in the midst of all this, rates dropped by a quarter point in the commercial lending landscape. So now the base rate right now for refinance or purchase on DSCR is roughly around 6.875 and goes up from there depending on the leverage, depending on the credit score of the borrower, and depending on the asset itself. And that's typically a 1 through 4. On the 5 through 25 units, meaning the small balance multifamily properties, we're still looking at rates starting at around 8%. I saw a bunch of loans getting locked and closed at around 8.25, 8.375, 8.5, depending on the credit score, depending on the DSCR, of anything from a 5 unit up to a 25 unit under 3 million. Fixed to rent, fixed to flip, bridge money is still holding really tight. It's not changed since March. We're somewhere starting at around 9.75 in that rate range and going up from there. And again, these are direct lenders that I'm talking about. The brokers are obviously layering their money onto it and their origination onto it, or their yield. So this is the base rate for direct private lenders that are putting money out, whether through correspondence, through brokers, or direct with an investor as well. So let's update you with some subjects of that I saw, some articles that caught my eye this past week. Article just rolled out this past day. Renters growing more likely to stay put, and that ties into another article that I saw that caught my eye. Rents remain near peak levels in April, so I think people are waiting to see where the shoe's going to drop, or are they migrating to better points of entry for rental if they're not buying a home? Because obviously, the price to buy a home right now, with the combination of tax increases, insurance increases, rates elevated, home buyer sentiment is pretty much has diminished all home buying from a spring market perspective. There was no spring market, zero spring market. So the spring market was the investors coming off the sidelines and identifying opportunities strictly on the MLS, and not even leveraging wholesalers at this point. There's now deals on the MLS again for investors to identify, because there's just not as many home buyers grabbing onto that, the notion of, dating the rate and marrying the home. It's kind of a facetious a line that really has gone stretched out and worn out in a sense. So very interesting articles there. Rates kind of leveled off on the conventional side on the 30-year at around 7.17. They elevated to about 7.4 during the past week and came down about an eighth, and leveled off at about 7.17. The unemployment numbers were not so good this past week that were released. Obviously, it'll also tie into job numbers coming up. Inflation numbers measured rose about 0.2%. So we're still, the facetious numbers that they came out with inflation a couple weeks ago, it's really not holding true. Obviously, it was a media controlled number that was thrown out there. I think we're somewhere between 9 and 15% on inflation right now, depending on who you discuss and what smart people you could sit down with to better understand. And I think the Feds are going to hold tight with the rate. I don't see there's any movement there. No word of anything helping like that. Pending home sales also decreased about 7.5%, down another 7.5% from last year. So you're seeing the sentiment, and now you're also seeing an issue with comps when it comes to uh, completed values of properties when you're trying to stabilize these properties for DSCR. I'm probably seeing somewhere between an 8 and 12% decrease in values, at least in the Northeast. Midwest, I'm seeing things pretty steady. Southwest and Southeast, somewhat steady, but the Northeast has taken a hammering in decreased values. So let's dive into our subject this morning: internal rate of return versus cash on cash return. People don't really understand the two as broken down as a lender would. I look at it as, what are you going to make in your pocket after your costs every month? Okay, cash per door. And then I'm trying to break it down simplified. And then what is the debt service coverage ratio to that subject property to suffice to the lender? They're actually a little different, because you could have a debt service of 1.2, which is or better, but if you're only making $200 to $300 a month, is the cost benefit savings or the cost benefit of making that money based on the newfound debt that you've established on that property? So you got to think about that. Is it cost benefit to make $200 a month or $300 a month or $500 a month? I know a lot of investors that will not invest in a property unless they make $500 a month per door as an investment. They're not even concerned about the DSCR. They're concerned, I'm not going to go and do a renovation unless I'm making $500 a month. I have investors that know, hey, listen, if I could put $100 to $150 a month in my pocket after I escrow for common area maintenance, deferred maintenance, vacancy management, they pay themselves $150 to $200 a month for per door that they own. That's how they don't even care about the debt service. Like I had a conversation with an investor that owns like 60 properties. I'm like, hey Adam, I'm like, your debt service is around 1.5, 1.6. So your cash flow is about $450 a month. He goes, well, I'm only taking $150. I'm going to put that $300 to the sidelines for the what ifs, because I'm renting Section 8, so there's going to be a little more wear and tear on that property. So evaluating the potential investment, investors rely on various financial metrics to calculate the overall ROI, or return on investment. Among the myriad of data points available, there's two that stand out, and this is the key indicators of profitability: the internal rate of return, IRR, and cash on cash return. IRR is a metric used to calculate the analyzed rate of return an investor can expect to earn over a holding period of an investment. It considers the timing and amount of both cash inflows and outflows, making a comprehensive matrix for assessing the overall performance of an investment. Cash on cash return, oftentimes referred as a cash yield, focuses on an annual cash flow generated by an investment relative to the initial cash investment. It provides a straightforward way to evaluate how much income an investor can expect to receive on their invested capital each year. Amy, good morning and welcome. Brief overview: who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning: cash on cash return versus internal rate of return.
Good morning. I am a longtime real estate investor turned tech founder and the chairwoman of the U.S. PropTech Council. Cash on cash return and IRR is what I lived for years when I was doing all of my real estate investments. I will say, for people to try to understand the difference, cash on cash return is obviously your monthly cash flows and what you expect to return, but IRR includes anything that, if you includes the transaction of the property. So when you sell the property and the profits from the sale, you include that in the IRR numbers, where you don't do that in the cash on cash return numbers. So it really, if you're in commercial land, what really drives IRR, the difference in the IRR obviously is, compared to your cash on cash return, is the cap rate at which you sell. So especially if you're doing a pro forma, your cap rate kind of rules the IRR number. But get back to basics. This is a super good discussion, because if you're going to be a real estate investor, you need to know what the lenders are looking at and why they're looking at it, and how you just educate yourself on what metrics matter, right? So this is a really cool discussion, Joe.
Thank you, Amy. Amy, do you think cap rate is dead in the multifamily space right now, or flatlined?
Yeah, it's pretty flat. I mean, it's it's really dependent on the interest rate movement, and the interest rate's not moving. So, but I think I think it obviously is expanded. I think the values haven't really caught up to the values haven't really adjusted enough to where the cap rates. If I explain this correctly, I mean the values have been holding artificially high because of the in multifamily because of the housing prices that we're in, right? So but if they have to come down, there's going to be continued pressure on those prices to come down. But it's everybody and their brother is going to have to take such a huge haircut, and it's this reluctance to do that. The sellers don't want to sell and take a big loss, but it's eventually going to have to get there. They're going to have no choice. So the prices are remaining artificially high, so the cap rates haven't really fully adjusted. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I will be transparent to tell you that I'm not in that game every day to know. But based off of my friends who are, that's what I'm hearing.
You know, the technical definition of internal rate of return, commonly referred as IRR, is the interest rate that makes the net profit value of all cash flow equal to zero. In layman terms, this equates to a project's actual or forecasted annual rate of growth by isolating the effect of compounding interest if the investment horizon is longer than 1 year, which cash on cash return does not.
Right.
Okay? So, which of these measures is right to use when picking a commercial real estate investment property, in the multifamily space or the mixed use space? Both a savvy investor calculates both return metrics and balances them against their own return priority, which is different for different investors with different financial situations. Comparatively, like a retiree looking to live off income generated by a property may be very focused on cash return of potential investments, while a younger entrepreneur may realize that the game is longer and suggesting a bias toward internal rate of return. The more patient your capital is, the more you should consider IRR as the most important metric. Every investor should think about objective when planning a strategy and setting metric goals. Some additional thoughts to that, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I think both are great. And people, what a lot of investors, when I was back in like a year or two ago, when I was selling deals and raising capital for a real estate investment, they followed trends. So like, so people wouldn't get into a deal unless there was at least a 10% cash on. Right? Obviously, that shifted as investments got, um, you know, the numbers couldn't pencil and things got lower. But the one thing that I will say, while these are great metrics, and yes, you use it in investment, and people use it to compare to other investments like stocks and all these other great things, those are not apples to apples investments, because what cash on cash and IRR does not equate to is all the tax benefits that you get from owning real estate. And so, if I were to add, if that's a conversation I have with every investor, is like, yes, real estate should be core to your portfolio. It shouldn't be an alternative investment anymore, because the bump that you get depending on your tax bracket, you can equate to at least 5 or 6 more points on your rate of return because of the tax strategies. But I digress. But you can't say that for everybody, because everybody's tax brackets are different or whatever. But yes, no, the internal rate of return for sure is a very, very long-term play. If you're looking for just cash flow, look at the cash on cash return. And then also, but understand that, whatever it is, if it's a cash on cash return, you need to know what your real estate hold is going to be, because that's going to determine that as well too. So if your pro forma is out 5 years, or if someone gives you a pro forma that is 10 years long, don't look at it, because that just inflates the number. So everybody, the standard is about 5 years. If somebody gives you something longer, those artificially inflate the return numbers. So just FYI.
Thank you, Amy. And I'm trying to equate this for the investor that's really focusing in the 1 through 4 space initially, because but most of our followers are not in the multifamily space. of what we discussed from a lending or ownership perspective. Because, again, nobody just wakes up and says, I'm going to own a 25 unit. They start off with a 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit. And I think I think the problem is so many investors try to blend the two. And they're really definitely different mindseted opportunities. If you're going to invest in a single family through 4 family space, it's definitely a different way of looking at cash on cash return and debt service. Where you're looking at multifamily, you have to look at the IRR and you have to look on the cash on cash return comparatively, because in the multifamily it's cap rate. In the single family through 4 family, or even up to small balance 25 units, 3 million below, it's debt service. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Thank you for resetting me. Yeah. Well, for sure. Then what I will say back, if I take it back to my single family days, what I learned from my stupidity, what I did not include, which is what you talk about all the time, is um, you probably should include this in your cash on cash return, even though it's not necessarily you needed. But all the reserves that you talk about, we weren't doing that. I mean, we were just like, oh, okay, we have our rent that's coming in. We deduct the mortgage interest and the tax reserve, and that's it. And then we're making $400 a month or whatever per house. But then you have to have, you're right, reserves for vacancy, reserve for maintenance, all these things that you should deduct from your cash on cash return that most people don't. And I think they artificially inflate those numbers, right? But you don't shoot yourself in the foot and have an oops because you can't take care of your property because you forgot to reserve for something. Yeah, that would be my hypothetical.
And we're starting to see that with a lot of portfolios through a lot of the major MSAs throughout the country and smaller MSAs. What I see now is foreclosures looming in the investment space, because since a lot of the asset-based lenders base their lending on the DSCR of the asset, and initially the reserve requirements to close the loan, the investors got over leveraged with debt because of deferred maintenance unforeseen in renovations ongoing, as well as poor management choices of property management in those markets. And it impacted the bottom line, where we're seeing now REOs coming to the table, which are not just homeowner, but now the investor. We're not talking like 5 or 10, we're talking several hundred per market are hitting the market, such as Baltimore, Philadelphia, Chicago, St. Louis. I can continue if you'd like. I know what markets are being impacted: Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, the Carolinas, more in the North Carolina than South Carolina right now. The Georgia market, certain areas in Florida are starting to see some foreclosures in the investment space because of over leveraging, but also because of insurance impact. Insurance quadrupled in Florida. So, like,
here in Texas, I mean, like shoot me in the face. Like, it's horrible.
I mean, think about this. You had a DSCR of 1.4, 1.5 in Florida. When you refinanced a property, and all of a sudden with insurance changes, you're now at 0.80. But now you have a vacancy or two, and now you're upside down in the whole portfolio, because the boat is leaking to the point where a pail can't even get the water out. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a very interesting.
Don't host on the coast. Like, forget it, because just the windstorm anywhere near, like, within an hour of the coast, because it basically, the windstorm insurance, you can't do the deal. It's insane right now. Especially if you're trying to buy something right now, it's hurricane season. Don't forget about it. I can't do the New York, Joe. I can't do both. Forget about it. Like, whatever it is.
Forget about it?
Don't buy it.
Well, I'm New Jersey, so we have the original forget about it. But, I mean, it's okay. We started it all off in Jersey side, so, but. Thank you.
But, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. So, really good detail to better understand the comparators as well, from DSCR to cap rate. What separates it is the asset type, meaning 1 through 4 unit, or and then 5 through 25 unit under 3 million, kind of dictates where you're looking at the comparatives of return on your money. Let's go to Mr. Joseph Martella. Good morning. It's been a minute. Brief overview: who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning. Cash on cash return versus internal rate of return.
Good morning, Joe. It was only a weekend that I haven't seen you, so
I know you miss me.
yeah, I do. You got that on replay. You can play that over and over again.
I will.
So I'm a buy and hold investor. I've done several burrs. I've done a little bit of private lending. I also invest in tax liens in the state of New Jersey. So I don't use IRR. IRR, I think, is a lot of predictions that you may not be able to predict. It goes into selling the property. It's not entertaining a sale. You don't know what rents are going to be. You don't know what your property is going to. There's a lot of factors that you have to kind of peer into the future, and I don't think that that's necessarily reliable, especially in the market that we're facing today. I go based on cash return. Everybody calculates that differently, right? And we have all these terms that we like to throw out, and it seems like as social media takes on, newer terms are created. But I use a simple basis of cash invested versus cash flow, right? So the amount of money invested divided by the amount of money that's going to be coming in every year actually it's the amount of money that's coming in every year divided by the amount of money invested equals your rate of return, your cash on cash return. Now, that's barring any maintenance, right? So any assumptions for maintenance or what have you, which is unpredictable. So I don't take that money on the cash flow and spend it. It goes and it sits in an account until it's good to go. So I'm prepped for any issues that come along the way, whether it's a roof or it's a water heater repair or it's what have you. I just replaced a 4-year-old water heater, so you have to be prepared for issues that come along. When a water heater should last, 10 years, in 4 years I'm replacing it. So that was an unexpected expense. As long as you're prepared for it, you're okay. But I look at the cash on cash. If it's not 15% or better for me, I'm not interested. If I get 5% in the bank right now, I'm not going to go into a rate of return of 10% for an additional 5% and take on the risk. You can talk about, there's other things that you can consider, equity pay down, appreciation, which may or may not happen, rentals increase, which may or may not happen. And I think that's what gets people in trouble when they make those assumptions and they base their investments based on unpredictable circumstances where they've been using this term, and it's been since COVID. We're in uncharted territory, and I think that we're in uncharted territory for real. I mean, real estate can't keep on going up. There has to be a ceiling at some point, right? We're beyond the 2 or 3% increase. Properties have gone up 20-40% in certain markets. People can't afford that, right? And Joe, it's just as you mentioned in the stats, we've increased in renters. We're becoming a renter nation, right? And generally, when the market tanks, people start renting instead of buying. Because they can't afford it. It's usually cheaper than owning a house. They can't afford the repairs or what have you. So, I mean, that's just how I look at it. I take IR, I kind of toss it to the side, and you might want to look at that as a historical thing. But I know what my cash on cash return is. I know what my reserves are based on my properties and what they're bringing in, and the portfolio has been performing for several years. So that's how I run it.
So overall, asking rents dropped by 0.7% or $12. The median asking rent in 50 largest metros registered at $17.23, up by $16 from the last month, but still down $33 from its August 2022 peak. So it's not that I think we're leveling on the rental landscape because of so much inventory coming to the front line. But what are you seeing different, Joe, as a landlord managing your own properties? What are you seeing in the tenant inquiry now differently than the last year when you were trying to rent a unit? Like, are you seeing something different? Is the discussion a little different? Is the negotiation a little different to obviously sustain cash on cash return for yourself?
So I can tell you on this last rental that I had, the inquiries was slower than what I'm used to getting. From getting 20 inquiries on average per property that I have available, I only had about 10. And I can tell you, a good portion of them were just not good candidates, to put it that way. So I don't know if it's a sign of the times on what you have out there. Maybe it's, and I hate to put it this way, but I don't know any other term. The leftovers are just out there looking for places to go because the people that need places have the places already, and they're going to stay put. I don't know what it is just yet. I mean, I have a new set of tenants, and they seem like lovely people. And like I said, people are good until they're not anymore, right? I had good tenants for 3 years, and then their situation changes, and then they're not good anymore. Well, just their situation changed, really. So there's no reflection on the people, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. It's just it's a challenge out there for people.
Yeah, I had lunch with a client yesterday, and I asked him point blank, "Where are you going to be in 10 years with your properties?" I said, "Well, my daughters don't really want anything to do with the properties. They'll inherit them, God forbid." I go, "But so what's the objective over the next 10 years?" He goes, "I want to make as much money as I possibly can off my properties." I said, "Well, then what are you worrying about the principal of the property if the property's performing? If it's good debt and you're making cash from it, why wouldn't you look at an interest only for the next 10 years instead of a 30-year fix where you're paying down principal on something that you might not ever want to pay off? You want to make it good debt." So I said, in 10 years, the real estate landscape is going to be a lot different than where we're sitting here today. I don't think it's going to be any worse or better, but I don't think it's going to be the same. So, Joe, what's your thoughts on looking at? I mean, because it was about a $200 or $250 difference in cash flow when I showed him the 30-year fix compared to the, say, $200 to the 10-year interest only. He was going to make $200 more over the next 10 years, or say 5 to 7 years. His tenant's going to be there on an average of 1 to 4 years from a Section 8 or a home affordability perspective if he gets the voucher. We're talking about 5 bedrooms, $2,800 a month. I mean, pick in the Delaware County market in Pennsylvania, which is a more safer market for Section 8. What's your thoughts on the 30-year fixed to the 10-year interest only? Because you're going to come with a 5-year prepay either way on the commercial lending side or a 3-year prepay. So even if rates move around, you have flexibility, but you're spinning off more cash. Do you think investors can commit to escrowing money to the sidelines and taking advantage of an interest only compared to a 30-year fixed?
So you and I have had this debate, right? At the many of dinners that we've gone to. I personally, the way I look at these properties, I'm never going to sell them, right? When I'm buying a property, I'm buying it to never sell. So, when we go into interest only, I look at it that it's risky, right? I look at it that it's risky for me because I don't know where interest rates are in 10 years, and I also wind up getting flashbacks for me, right? I look at 2008 where people had the adjustable rate mortgages. I'm looking at it now where the commercial mortgages, where they have those 5-year adjustments and those commercial properties have fallen into trouble. So, I mean, I wouldn't want the extra $200 a month because I'm not looking to sell. I'd rather have my expenses fixed, right? Because at the end of the day, if I go with a 30-year fixed, Joe, you're my only fixed expense, except for taxes and insurance, right? You're my only fixed expense that I can predict for the next 30 years, right? So you want to go into IRR, I mean, part of that is being able to predict your expenses. Well, then you go into the 30-year fixed. I'm also looking to refinance every 6 to 7 years and cash out again.
Yeah.
So I want to pay down. I want to pay into the equity. I want to pay down that loan so I can then cash out refinance in 7 years. So the 5-year prepay doesn't matter to me. But I mean, I have I look at it, the 30-year fix, I look like the ball is more in my court. I mean, we all have these predictions, right? And Mike Tyson said it. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah, I might want to hold on to a property and then sell it in 10 years. But what happens at that 10-year mark where either I can't sell it or then I don't want to sell it? And now I'm in a situation where I may have to sell it. And maybe at a discount because interest rates went up. I mean, you always have to look at it from the negative side because when everything goes positive, it's easy to make a decision, right? Interest rates go down. Oh, well, then it's a no-brainer, silly. Well, then you just go with the lower interest rate. But if interest rates go up and the value goes down and you're underwater in your mortgage, you're in a little bit of trouble, and no one can predict what 10 years is.
Yeah.
So, the 5-year prepay is just it. You just pay to get out if you need to. And if you go to a lower rate and the money makes sense, even on the 30-year fixed. I mean, but it is what it is.
Amy, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, can I ask the other Joe, a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So this is always interesting to me because I've been a landlord for a long time. I'm just curious because you're recently taking application. What really determines the rental prices is the wages, right? So the people that were recently applying, were you able to get your rent multiple, and what is it? Is it 3 times? Did you have to move it because of inflation, or where are the people coming in on as far as the wages compared to what you were seeing before?
Based on the area and inflation, I knocked it down to 2.5 times. But
you did?
Yeah, I did. But they the rent is $2,000 a month. They make $150 combined, so they're well within the multiples.
Oh, so that's interesting because most people raise the rental. They don't go down; they go up. And the reason why they go up is because they want to make sure that they can make the rents. Because now it really, if you don't have 4 to 5 times, because you're having to spend more on your car payment, more on food, more on everything else. People have gone from 3 to 4 to make sure that they can make the rent payment. So I was curious.
Well, yeah, I advertised 2.5 times, and I went down that way because my real target was Section 8, and I wanted to live as tenant. So, again, you can't predict the future. So,
I know. Okay.
My real thing, and I talked about this with Joe, right? I was looking. I'm concerned about the economy. I was looking to recession-proof my portfolio by adding another Section 8 tenant in there. And along came these cash buyers, and you have to hold everybody to the same standard. But again, they already met that standard. $150,000 gross. But I also look at that. Those multiples, right? The banks really make them, right? They're 3 times a third of your property. A third of your income can't be put towards the property, right? More than a third. But in reality, it doesn't really matter because if people spend it correctly, you're screwed.
Well, that's true. That's true. So
Right.
it's a way to qualify. I mean, everybody has the ability to accept whoever they want to accept. They have their criteria, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a landlord and you want to take them anyway, it's your prerogative. Your prerogative to take them. I find it interesting, especially on the wages, because that's really, really the lever that's going to determine what's rentable or not and where prices go. Prices from a rent perspective, but the prices from the rent perspective turn into values later, right? Over time. So that's why I was asking about the wages.
Right.
Well, thank you, Amy and Joe. I just want to throw something else out there before we go on to the next one of our next moderators. Renter tenure by other time frames, okay? 5 to 9 years. 1 in 6 lived in their home for 5 to 9 years in 2022, up 14% a decade earlier. 1 to 4 years. The lion's share of renters stayed put for 1 to 4 years. Just over 2 in 5, 41.8% stayed in their home for 1 to 4 years in 2022, up from 39% a decade earlier. 12 months or less, 1/4, 25.2% of renters stayed in their home for 12 months or less before moving in 2022. That's down from 32% in 2012. Younger renters are more likely to move often than older renters. Gen Z, more than half. Millennials, about 28%. Gen X, the lion's share of Gen X renters stayed in their home between 1 and 4 years. And baby boomers, roughly 1/3 of the baby boomers renters have lived in their home for 10 plus years. Joe's, any thoughts before we go to Justin? Joe, you there?
No, I'm sorry. I'm actually looking at this comment in the comments by Robert Burnett. So I mean, I'm sorry. I was reading what he was writing about some challenges that he's facing in his rental, where the renters were not nice to his property. So I apologize, Joe.
So where does Robert want to come up?
I offered him the opportunity, so
if he wants to raise his hand, please have him come up, and we can dive into maybe giving him some assistance. But I appreciate you answering that for me, Joe. There he is.
He's on stage.
There we go, Robert. How are you? Good morning.
Yeah, those rental moratoriums, I couldn't do an eviction, and they just kind of stayed there and trashed the place for 2 years. So, all my money went to paying the mortgage and not fixing the house or not being able to get a new renter. So, and then which made my credit so horrible that nobody will loan to me to get a construction loan.
So Robert, where are you located? Where's your market? What market are you in?
I'm in California.
What part?
I'm up in the northern part of the state, kind of rural.
Okay. So the tenants took advantage of your circumstance. I'm very sorry to hear that. I mean, you could look. Are these properties in your personal name or LLC?
They're in my personal name.
Okay.
I considered refinancing, but the problem is that the interest rates are so high right now. It just doesn't make sense. I have a low interest rate, so I'm just going to keep going and try to save up money to fix it up and get. Actually, I can, because I have 2 lots. I can put a ADU there, and we're considering splitting the house into a duplex. So
understood. Well, some objectives here that you might want to look at. Asset-based lending has become more the dominant factor in investment financing. You might want to talk to your accountant and or an attorney in regards to the LLC setup. Yeah, the rates might be higher, but getting some of this debt out of your personal name, whether you identify a trusted business partner to JV with that has the credit or cash to bring to the table to justify the repairs, to restabilize your portfolio, might be an option that's out there in front of you. I don't know. I don't know enough about you or anything else other than you got kind of trampled by really bad professional tenants, I'll call them. But the positives of investment financing today, comparatively to 5 years ago, asset-based lending is on the forefront and pretty much taking over the investment financing for 1 through 4, 5 through 25 units, fixed to rent, fixed to flip, and even new construction, single family through 4 family, everything through the veil of the LLC, and not pressuring or impacting your personal DTI or credit over time. So you might want to sit down with a CPA or an accountant and or your lawyer to kind of figure out the plan over time to transitioning a lot of that property out of your name so the impact is not as heavy over time, and maybe identify a trusted partner or family member that you could bring in that might have the credit or the reserves to reset the button. And again, I don't know enough, and I'm not here to give you advice. I'm not a lawyer and CPA. Please don't sue me. But this is just discussion that we're having based on IRR and cash-on-cash return, and I want to see people do well. I do post articles of education on my LinkedIn twice a week. Please follow me on LinkedIn if you'd like, or connect with me on LinkedIn. You don't have to just follow. You can connect with me. I don't hide behind any mysterious name or logo, not logo, but name of my company or whatever. My name here is the same name on LinkedIn as well as Facebook and things of that nature. So I hope we could be of help to you, Robert, in the now and in the future.
I really appreciate that, and I learn a lot from this room and other rooms like this. it's kind of an opportunity situation where I live now because a lot of the properties around here that could be rentals are, they're just the prices are dropping down to where it's like half of it what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous, kind of weird bubble market here. But I don't see properties going up in price for another 5 years, so it's just a great time to buy.
I agree with
I
you.
just got stuck in that bad credit situation.
Yep.
And I can't even get loans for my business because of my credit. So it's just, it's difficult.
I understand, and I'm really sorry to hear that. And I do agree with you. I think we're in the seventh inning on this elevated values of properties. I'm seeing right now in front of my eyes on appraisals 8 to 12% difference in values right now on appraisals coming back. Not just one. I'm talking like 30 of them. Like when somebody tells me their property's worth 230, it's coming back at 215 or 218. Somebody's telling me their property's worth 175, it's coming back at 155. I mean, I'm actually seeing a couple clients, they're setting the mark on values in their own market because they're buying so much in one concentrated area. Their comps are actually one or two of their properties. So there's overlap because I'm telling you, the home buyer sentiment is real. The home buyer today wants to rent. They don't want to buy unless it's out of, circumstances. They don't see the justification. Good morning, Justin. Welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to the discussion this morning. Cash on cash return versus internal rate of return.
Yeah, definitely. Good morning, everybody. Justin Jefferson. I'm in the southern Louisiana market. I'll be in Dallas soon, probably for the end of the summer for sure now. But one thing that Mr. Robert, I'm dealing with a very similar situation. I figured some ways to kind of navigate and continue to buy and do other things as well, primarily through partnerships and private capital, and you can work with people like Joe sometimes as well when you have certain things in place. Oh yeah, man, big Dallas, big Texas. So, anyways, man, another thing that I would consider, right, is you know another similar situation I found myself in last year was for 2 years, which is kind of funny, just dumping all my money trying to save a profit. Dumping thousands every month. And we're talking about a duplex. And then, it came to the point where we were like, look, let's just sell this property and do other things. So that's something else that I wanted you to consider as well as you open your mind to partnerships, as you open your mind to consider maybe getting rid of this property. And this is just my thought. I don't know anything else you got going on in your history, but consider that and consider investing your money and your time in something that can increase in value, and it's not a money pit just to save it because you already have it. And like I said, the partnership is what's going to allow you to, you utilize the bank or utilize some other way of funding this deal, to make it possible, and you use the same skill sets or whatever you brought to the table before, whether that's the cash you were going to dump into this one, and you put it into this new investment, maybe a better investment, maybe something you've learned about more, learned since you bought that one initially, and just reapply it. So that's the first thing I think you should think about. But my comments on cash on cash return versus internal rate of return, man, a lot of things. But well, honestly, I'll just keep it brief on that. I think a lot of these terminologies have been used differently over the years. I don't like when people use certain terms with their pitches and with their marketing and with their advertisements of deals and stuff like that. But to somebody who's been listening to a lot of pitches or given a set amount of pitches, uh, to the beginners, you should know, copying jargon and copying wordplay that you see in other places does not necessarily make you look like an expert. So if you're describing cash on cash return to me, right, and it's looking like you're putting other elements in there, I can tell you really haven't
you're really not there. But for cash on cash is me. Look, if I put in $20,000, whether it's a down payment, whether what it is to get this deal started, how long does it take for me to recoup that cash on the deal? Even if I'm paying a mortgage, even if I'm paying whatever cash I put in, how long does it take for me to recoup? And my rate of return is another way of saying how long does it take for me to recoup money, period, in a deal, right? So for me, cash on cash is specific to the liquid out of my pocket, liquid in the deal to get it going, and the my internal rate of return is gonna be, I guess, it's just for me is descriptive of my return over time. What actually goes to me, and how fast does it come back to me over that period of time or the life of the loan. And so those are my comments this morning, Joe. Feel free to ad lib if you need it, but that's all I got.
Thank you, Justin. I'm going to go to see if Ed's available. If he's not available, just put a thumbs up if you're not available, Ed. I'm not sure if you're available to chat and give insight. So if Ed's not available, that's fine. I made Ed a moderator because I've been friends with Ed actually longer than Joe, scary enough. But so Ed might be busy right now, but we appreciate him coming up as well. Ed, are you available?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Ed, why don't you give a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and thoughts to what we're discussing on cash return versus internal rate of return?
Well, right now I'm a preferred partner with MD Capital Solutions. We provide investors with unsecured credit lines. As far as the discussion is, I'm not too familiar with the internal rate of return, but the cash on cash, I have to agree with Gus. It's to keep it simple is like how long is it going to take to get my money back, and what's it going to take, and determine what your rate of return is on that way.
So Ed, I got to ask you, what's your thoughts on a lot of this hoopla on some of the social media sites out there? Do you really think people are making what they're making, or do you think there's some grand, exaggerated play of promotion on such things as Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram? What's your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I'm getting mixed reviews. Like, there's a group that in my area that make a lot of grand, you know, success stories, and I know for a fact they're over leveraged on several properties where they actually had to bring money to the table to balance out their books. So, where's the happy middle of trust when it comes to our space? Who do we trust in who's actually doing what they're supposed to be doing and who's really making money? Well, I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Ed? You've been around a long time. I mean, be as kind as possible, but what's your thought? I mean, is there a breaking point with some of the falsified information of success stories out there? I mean, is there a certain point we have to think about?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that the real play, they're not on Facebook all day posting their success stories and showing checks and stuff like that. That's just, but I think, you have to get out there and meet the real players in person to find out, like really what they're doing and stuff like that. They're not Facebook. What do you call them? Facebook
Legends?
Yeah. So, and you said it before. I think people on Facebook are living the lives they want to live, not necessarily the lives they're living.
Hey, listen.
So, you have to put a kind of like the media news now. You have to decide what you want to believe, what you don't want to believe.
Listen, I want to talk about our failures. Like, listen, I failed at partnerships. I'm not a big fan of partnerships and joint ventures. I think, my personal opinion, my only partner in my life right now is my wife, and I get very nervous about a lot of partnerships. But that's my personal opinion because I made a lot of mistakes from it. Okay, and I want to talk about my failures. That was a failure, and I learned from it. And then also not getting into asset-based lending sooner. Like, I've been in the industry 24 years. I've been in the asset-based lending for 5 of those years. I was always very investor friendly. I should have recognized that when this industry came to the front line about 12 years ago and just jumped in it, full head into the deal. I just was hesitant to jumping out of the regional banking space. I'm passionate about what I did, but I that was a major mistake. I should have got in when when the structures were being built in asset based lending, which is fine. I'm doing great where I'm at, but that was a mistake. That was a failure. So I think people don't discuss their failures enough, and that's like I really appreciate Robert and Justin coming up and talking about the failures or the unsuccessful pieces of their real estate career and how they're trying to restructure that and they're learning from that. You know, a lot of people don't ever learn from their mistakes, right, Ed?
Yeah, I agree, Joe. And I'll be first to admit I was a financial failure in my younger years because I just didn't have any financial literacy. You know what I mean? They don't teach that in school, and it's hard to come by. You know, and a lot of people don't want to pay to invest in themselves first to to overcome that. You know, and yeah, and the people on Facebook, they'll never admit the failures because I don't know why. And as far as Robert concerned, maybe it's time to cut bait, Robert, and just lick your wounds and move on, to something else and learn from, like you said, maybe learn you need reserves, cash reserves for emergencies. It's an unsecured line of credit. Little plug there for me.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate you coming up and being part of this. I made you a moderator, by the way. You have no choice of coming up now.
Yeah. You know where to mail a check, right?
Yeah, to my house. I'm just gonna put my address on the top and in the middle on all the envelopes I'm gonna lick.
And you got my last name spelled correctly.
Scores, Scores. Yeah, I got it all written out correctly.
All right, Joe.
I've known Ed as long as I've been down in the Philadelphia market. He came to one of my first events that I held at Dave and Buster's on Delaware Avenue, so I remember it vividly. So we've been colleagues and friends since. We bust each other's chops. He takes the ribbings as well as gives the ribbings.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, Joe. Talk to you.
Let's get some outros from Mr. Martella. Your thoughts to our discussion this morning: cash on cash return versus internal rate of return.
Yeah, to piggyback on our discussion, right? The people don't post their failures on Facebook because number one, generally that generation is too young to have had any failures, and you don't get reactions or likes or views on posting bad news, right? So, and a lot of these people that are posting on Facebook and Instagram and all the other social medias don't have the experience to actually post what they're posting, and I know that firsthand. So that's what goes on there. And going into Robert, hey, you might want to look in. Maybe you bring a partner into that deal. Look at what the equity that you have, and maybe you sell off a piece of that equity into an investor that would wind up putting the money that money would wind up going into the renovation, so you get that property performing again, and then just put in a buyout option in your contract between them. So that's also an option for you to look at to try to dig yourself out of that hole that you're in, and that'll help you to get where you're at. And then you go to Joe Scarice once you move it under an LLC, and then refinance into a DSCR loan, and then that'll get you out of the whole your personal credit and everything. You'll have a loan that's paid off. You have a property that's performing, and that'll get you out of that hole. I was in that hole in 2008 during that crash, and I wish I had someone that actually brought that out. We didn't have any platforms like this back then. Bigger Pockets was really the only one that was out there, and everybody was really just braggadocious, and the RIAs weren't as strong. So definitely think that you should consider something like that. Overall, Joe, great room, great topic, really good debate stuff here. I love debating, as you know. Some people call it arguing. I call it debating. It really gets people's minds going, and that's perfect for this room. With getting people's minds going, because that's what this is all about, right? And I'm really glad that Robert came up here so we can actually pour some expertise and experience into him to help him in his issues and help him work through it. But good room, Joe. Thanks for having it.
Thank you, Joe. And Amy, your brief outro in regards to cash-on-cash return versus internal rate of return.
Thanks for having the room, Joe. It's great as usual. I'm Amy Palvido. I am the chairwoman of the U.S. PropTech Council. I am also a PropTech founder. For those of you who don't know what PropTech is, it is real estate technology. And I've been a long-time real estate investor. I think that the spirit of the room really is to educate yourself on what these metrics are, because they do matter. Even if you, as you scale, if you go from 1 to 4 to maybe, even with 60 single-family homes, you're going to get into, sorry, I'm out on a walk. You're going to get into financing where the lenders are going to ask you some of these things, and you can't just come and go, I don't know what you're talking about. You got to know what you're doing. So it's all about educating yourself and understanding that. Robert, my advice for you is, since you are in California, I would also look into all the green incentives that are available to you as an owner. And maybe you can get some of your renovations paid through incentives via the green improvements. If you need a link, let me know.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Justin, Ed, Robert. I want to thank everybody this morning. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Realty 411 with Linda Pelagas, our national publication, for insight and events nationally. I want to thank MB Capital, our unsecured business line of credit referral program. I'd like to thank Perkatech, Yardell Perkins, our social media strategist, and as I call him, Oz behind the drape. And I want to thank Lenmar Capital, myself as Joe Scarice, a senior loan analyst, asset-based lender nationwide in all 50 states. We'll be back here tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with another very strong subject of matter. And my quote this morning, you don't lose. If you get knocked down, you lose if you stay down. Muhammad Ali. Everybody have a blessed Saturday morning. We'll see you Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. here on the Creative Birth Strategy House and podcast. Everybody have a great Saturday. We'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds.
Bye, Joe.